Once again, this is Nick, and I will continue on the videos about classroom discipline sponsored by the Royalty Approach to Education. Again, we have the overall performance scores that one can get at opsscores.com. Overall performance scores. My writings can be seen at thebookpatch.com and paidteachers.com. Part 1 still classroom behavior management, section A, maintaining classroom discipline. Maintaining classroom discipline. And we are very close to beginning a school year. And so you are at the school for the professional development, which is what I spoke about in the last video. So you're there and you now have in your hand the roster of the classes, the names of the students of the classes. Now you know the names of the students and you know how many students are in the class. This particular video is going to be divided into new teachers to the school and teachers that are returning, teachers who are returning to the school. Let me just say that for teachers who are returning to the school, you might have been given a tentative classroom and class assignment at the end of the previous school year. This is really something that depends on the individual school. Some schools do it, some schools don't. Some schools wait until the middle of the summer to send out a notification to the teachers. Others give them something on the last day of school, or sometimes even before the last day of school. Now, if you do have that gives you some leeway to start some form of preparation, because at least you know the classes that you're teaching, you know the grades, and sometimes you also know the classroom that to which you have been assigned. So I'll be talking to the returning teachers who are returning to the same school. Now, in many cases, you would already know, a significant majority of the students, whether you taught them before or you have heard about their behavior in other classes, from other teachers. So you can use that information to now begin that process of formulating methods to deal with behavioral problems from those students. Now, if you taught them before, you know exactly the nature of the behavioral problem. You know what they are capable of doing or not doing, and you can begin to create a plan. Now, some form, as a matter of fact, many forms of disruption in classroom, and this could be probably among the worst, when students combine with other students, through friendship, for whatever reason, they're buddies or they're friends, and they need these other individuals, on whom they can depend to work together to disrupt the class. Alright, so when you get your class roster, you might notice that those combinations might not be there, or they might be a little different. Instead of having three individuals together, you might only have two. But even if you don't have any at all, you can rest assured that if this person is quite disruptive, he or she will find somebody else within the class to find a way to cause disruption. And I will be talking about things like these as we get into the classroom itself. Because there are ways that you can use to handle such situations. Now, depending on the administration, you could try to create an argument that placing certain children in your class for second or third year might not be the best idea. Again, let me just reiterate something that I would have said a number of videos before, that we are still talking about quote unquote regular classes. This is not about special education. Special education, those are specialized areas in which the teacher could have the same students not only uh, from class to class throughout the day, but they could have the same students over a number of years, 2 or 3 years. So that's a completely different scenario. We are still talking about regular students in this case. So you can create an argument that it is counterproductive, for the student, for the teacher, and even for the school. And you might want to create the argument in that order. You want to make sure that you do insist that the the non-productivity of the idea of putting the student in your class is primarily for the student's interest, in the best interest of the student. Then you can mention in the best interest of the teacher, and then administrators are typically very reluctant to accede to such requests. They don't like to give in to something like that, mainly because uh, if you do it for one teacher, you're gonna have to start doing it for other teachers, and and if this continues, the disruptive action could could create some consequences that might not be very very pleasant for the school, might not be in the best interest of the school. So they will typically insist that, look, these are the students that you to whom you are assigned this year, and you should stick with that roster. But if you have a very very strong argument, sometimes they do listen to it. Arguments such as, over the past 2 years, or year or 2 years, I mean, the student has been consistently disruptive, and you have evidence to show that last year or the year before, all these means have been used. All these means have been used. Even the student has even been suspended because of his or her actions, and still nothing. Including there have been multiple parent conferences and so on, and nothing. In many cases, the administration is pretty much aware of that, and sometimes just changing the teacher, just changing the student from one teacher to the next, um, might just be the better of two options that are not very popular. But if you do change the teacher, one of the things that will happen is that that the student's disruption could be delayed a little, because much of the disruptive behavior for the second or third year would have to do with the fact that the student already knows the teacher. So if you change the student, if you change the teacher, then the student will need some time to get accustomed to the other teacher before he or she begins that form of disruptive behavior. Um, so getting the roster means that you now have a class count. As you know, which is the bigger class, which are the smaller classes, and so on. So remember that a smaller class is generally easier to control, but we all know that it takes only one or two students that are very disruptive to really turn things around. It's really not that difficult for one or two students to disrupt the entire class. And again, I will talk about such things when we get into speaking about disruptive behavior while you're teaching, when the actual instruction time has begun. Now, for new teachers who are new to the school or new teaching, there's little that you can do when you get a roster. But you have a few things that you can still work on. If you now find a teacher that you can trust, and you can run the list by the teacher, and the teacher could probably give you some guidelines, because the teacher, those teachers would have known these students before. You would not have known anything at all. So whatever information that they give you about those students' behavior could be quite helpful. But be mindful of the fact that you got to be very careful um, in accepting everything that you hear, because ultimately, that student can be very different. It's an entire summer that has passed. The student is in a different grade, an older, higher grade, and things could change. Their behaviors could change. Unfortunately, the behaviors could also change for the worse. So a good student last year could turn out to be a pretty disruptive student this year. So that's another thing that has to be taken into consideration. But the most important thing that you can do is work on the class size. How many students are in your classes, and you can begin to make some plans to control the discipline. Okay. You could also look at the type of students you have. For example, the class full of regular students is an honors class, is an advanced class, is a gifted class, and of course, honors, gifted, and advanced classes. Those classes are usually very well behaved, and the percent of disruptive behavior that you have in those classes is very very low, very very low. All right, this is the end of this video. The next video is still up in the air in terms of what it will be. I'm thinking about doing a summary of all the videos that have been presented. Uh, you know, with the preparation even before the classes start. So I'll make a decision on that. Okay. So until next time, this is Nick. Thank you.